Good afternoon, students. Welcome to Sankalp Learning Classes. Today we are discussing the important question answer from the chapter Metals and Non-Metals. Yes, already we have discussed these questions, some questions from this chapter. So this is the continuation part of this chapter. Okay. So in this class we are discussing the important questions will be asked in your board exam. Okay, I hope this video will be helpful those who are facing the board exam in this year. Okay, yes, let us start with the first question. You must have seen tarnished copper vessel being cleaned with lemon or tamarind juice. Explain why these soap substances are effective in cleaning the vessels. Yes, sometimes I hope you have seen in your house what happens. The color of the copper vessels changed, and that is cleaned by the some lemon or tamarind juice. What is the reason behind this? How they are able to clean that? Just a minute. Yes. Here copper reacts with the moist carbon dioxide which forms the copper carbonate. As a result, copper vessels loses its shiny brown surface forming the green layer of the copper carbonate. Okay, so that is the reason for the green layer of the copper carbonate. Then the citric acid present in the lemon and the or the tartaric acid which is present in the tamarind. Tartaric acid present in the tamarind neutralizes the basic copper carbonate and dissolves the layer. So these acids, citric acid and tartaric acids, they neutralize they dissolve this layer. So that is why the tarnished copper vessels are cleaned with the lemon or tamarind juice to give the surface of copper vessels its characteristic luster. Okay, so the shiny nature of the metal. So that is the reason. Please note down this. Yes, next question. Differentiate between the metal and non-metal on the basis of their chemical properties. Okay. Yes, I will give 1 minute to write the question. Differentiate between the metal and non-metal on the basis of their chemical properties. Here. The metals are electropositive. Metals combine with oxygen and form the metallic oxides. Then metallic oxides are bases and metallic oxides are insoluble in water, but some oxides soluble in water and forms the alkalis. Then the metals react with the water to form the metallic oxide and hydrogen gas will be released. Again, this metallic oxide dissolve in water and form the metallic hydroxide. They are commonly alkaline in nature. Metals produce the chlorides. These are electrovalent and ionic compounds. Then what about the non-metals? Non-metals react with metals and gain the electrons and forms the cations. Most of the non-metal dissolve in water and forms the acidic or neutral oxides. Non-metal do not displace the hydrogen from the dilute acids, and so these non-metals react with hydrogen and forms the hydride. So these are the some chemical properties of metals and non-metals. Next question. Give reason. Metals are used in making cooking vessels. Sodium metal is stored in kerosene. Please note down this question. Give reason question. Yes, here. Metals have good thermal conductivity and high melting point. So the metals are used to make the cooking vessels because the metals have the thermal conductivity and the high melting point. That is the first reason. Second one, sodium metal is stored in kerosene. Why sodium is the metal? Why it is stored in the kerosene? Because sodium reacts vigorously with the atmosphere, which is atmospheric oxygen, and catch the fire. So because of this reason, sodium reacts, the sodium is kept in the kerosene. Next question. When a calcium metal reacts with water, the liberated hydrogen gas does not catch fire. Ionic compounds have high melting point and boiling point. Please note down this. When a calcium metal reacts with water, the liberated hydrogen gas does not catch the fire. Okay. So that is the very important question. And ionic compounds have high melting point and boiling points. Here. So when the calcium metal reacts with the water, so the liberated, when the calcium react with the water, the liberated gas, calcium hydroxide, is formed, and the gas is not the small amount and which is not able to catch the fire. So that is the main reason, which is not sufficient to catch the fire. The second question, ionic compounds have high melting point and the boiling points. The ionic compounds, they are having the high interionic bonds in between them. So in between the atoms. So that is the more energy is needed to break down these bonds. So the ionic compounds have high melting point and the boiling points. Next question. You are given a hammer, battery, bulb, wires, and a switch. How could you use them to distinguish between samples of metals and non-metals? Assess the usefulness of these tests in distinguishing between the metals and the non-metals. Just read the question properly. You are given the hammer and a battery and a bulb and wires and a switch. Okay. How could you use them to distinguish between the samples of metals and the non-metals. Assess the usefulness of this test, distinguishing between the metals and the non-metals. Okay, let us see the answer. With a hammer on beating the sample, if it changes into thin sheets, then it is a metal because the metals have the malleable character, right? So we may call it as a metal. Otherwise, it is a non-metal. Then we can use the battery, bulb and wires and a switch to set up the circuit with sample. If the sample conducts the electricity, then it is a metal, otherwise non-metal. Then, so these above tests are useful in the distinguishing between metals and non-metals, as these based on the physical properties. So, no chemical reactions are involved in this test. Only chemical properties are used to distinguish these properties. Okay, distinguishing the metal and non-metal. Next question ನೋಡಿ. Next one. You must have seen tarnished copper vessels being cleaned with lemon and tamarind juice. Explain these source substances are effective in cleaning the vessel. So this question already we have discussed. So no need to discuss this answer. Yes, next question. Draw a neat label diagram of electrophytic electrolytic refining of copper and label the parts. So your answer is also given here. So you can see the electrolytic refining of the copper metal. Okay. So and labeling. Labeling is also very important. Cathode, anode and the acidified copper sulfate solution, anode mud. These all are the very important labelings. So that you have to practice. Okay. So this is the next question. Please note down this question. Next question. What are the constraints of solder alloy? Which property of solder makes it suitable for welding electrical wires? Please note down the question. Lead and tin are the constituents of this alloy, and this alloy has low melting point, making it suitable for welding electrical wires. So that is the very important uses of this alloy. Okay. Next question. give the steps involved in extracting low medium reactivity metals from their respective sulfide ores. Okay. Please note down this question. When a low and medium reactivity metals are extracted, and individual sulfide ores is heated first in the air. Sulfide ores are heated. So this helps in obtaining the oxide of the metal. So this oxide, so that is very easy to extract a metal from the oxide than the sulfide or carbonate. Okay. Then mercury is a metal. So you can see the reactivity of mercury is low, and when it is react with the mercury sulfide is react with the water, it forms the mercury oxide and the sulfur dioxide. So after that, mercury oxide is induced to obtain the mercury. So when this mercury oxide, so that when it is heated, it forms the mercury and the oxygen. So zinc is a metal, so that is having the medium reactivity. So that is in the form of zinc sulfide. Okay. So then the zinc sulfide is converted into oxide in the presence of the oxygen when it is heated with the oxygen. So you have to heat it. Then the zinc sulfide that converted into zinc oxide, then it convert into zinc oxide. Then when it is reduced with the carbon, it forms the zinc and carbon monoxide. So which is the carbon is the reducing agent. Okay. So like this, the steps involved in the extracting the low medium reactivity metals from their respective sulfide ores. Please note down the question. And this is the answer. Okay, please note down this. Then here, give reasons. Reactivity of aluminium decreases if it is dipped in HNO3. Second one, carbon cannot reduce the oxides of sodium and the magnesium. And the third one, sodium chloride is not a conductor of electricity in a solid state, whereas it does not conduct electricity in aqueous solution as well as in the molten state. And the fourth one, iron particles galvanized. And the fifth one, here, metals like sodium, potassium, calcium and magnesium are never found in their free state in nature. So you should give the answer for these all questions. One of the very important question. First, you should note down these questions. Okay. So give reason questions. Just note down these all questions. After that, we have to solve the what are the reasons for these questions. Okay, so let us start with the first one. Here, the reactivity of aluminum decreases when it dipped in nitric acid. Okay, so the first answer, that is, when the aluminium is dipped in nitric acid, a layer of aluminum oxide is formed on a metal. It happens because nitric acid is a potent oxidizing agent. The layer of aluminum oxide prevents further reaction of the aluminium. So that is the reason. Very important. Please note down the reason for the first question. Second question. Carbon cannot reduce the oxides of sodium and the magnesium, Na or Mg. Here, sodium and magnesium tend to react with oxygen rather than the carbon, because sodium and magnesium, you know that they are highly reactive metals. Hence, carbon cannot reduce the oxides of sodium and the magnesium. So, this which is not reduced by this. Okay. Next question. Sodium chloride is not a conductor of electricity in solid state, whereas it does not conduct electricity in aqueous solution as well as in the molten state. So why it is not conducting the ions here? Ionic compounds do not conduct electricity in a solid state, but they conduct the aqueous and molten state due to the presence of free electrons. This property is shown by the sodium chloride. Next question. Iron articles are galvanized. You know the process of galvanization. Alva? Then iron articles are galvanized to prevent them from rusting, because after galvanization the layer of zinc work as a protective layer. So that is the process of the galvanization. So that is also a very important process. Next one. Metals like sodium, potassium, calcium and magnesium are never found in their free state in nature. So why they are not found in a free form in the nature? Metals such as sodium, potassium, calcium and magnesium are highly reactive metals, and hence they are not found in their free state. Means they are very reactive metal. So the pure form is not found. Okay, so that is not found in their state. So that is these all are the reasons. Please note down the reasons. Next question. Give below are the steps, given below are the steps for extraction of copper from its ore. Write the reaction involved: roasting of copper, so that is the copper sulfide, reduction of the copper oxide with the copper sulfide, electrolytic refining. Yeah. So given below are the steps of extraction of copper from its ore. Okay. Then write the reactions involved. So you have to write if the reactions are involved, that you have to mention. First thing, you have to note down the questions. First question, roasting of copper sulfide. The roasting of copper sulfide, that is the Cu2S, is the copper sulfide. When it is heated with the oxygen, it forms the copper oxide and the sulfur dioxide. That process is known as a roasting process. Then reduction of copper oxide with the copper sulfide. Here the copper oxide, so that is reduced with the copper sulfide into copper and sulfur dioxide. Here heat is involved. Heat is there. So here also heat. Okay. So this one. Then at cathode, what happens? So the copper ions plus 2, which gain the 2 electrons, and it will become copper. Electrolytic refining, so of the copper. Okay. Next question. Please note down this one also. Explain the extracting of metals of low reactivity series. So we have to explain with examples how the metals of low reactivity series are, so that is extracted. The first thing is the metals in the low reactivity series, which are there. So they are unreactive or least reactive. So for example, cinnabar, that is the HGS, right? Mercury is an ore of mercury. When it is heated in air, it is first converted into mercuric oxide. So mercuric oxide is formed, and mercuric oxide is then produced to mercury on the further heating. Mercuric oxide, so that is formed by the mercuric sulfide. And on heating, the mercuric oxide then reduced to the mercury on the further heating. Yes, here mercuric oxide. So reaction with the oxygen. When it is heated, it forms the mercuric oxide and the sulfur dioxide. When the mercury oxide is heated, it forms the mercury and the oxygen. Okay. So similarly, copper, which is found as copper sulfide in nature, can be obtained from its ore by just heating in air. So that is the reason. Please note down these reactions also. Please practice these reactions also. These reactions are very important. So when the copper sulfide heated with the oxygen, it forms the copper oxide and the sulfur dioxide. When the copper oxide Cu2O, so which is heated with the copper sulfide, it forms the copper and the sulfur oxide. So that is the these all are the reactions how the low reactivity series metals are obtained. So how they are extracted. Okay. So that is the answer. Next question. Explain the extracting of metals of top reactivity series. How these metals are obtained. So when they are highly reactive series, they are from highly reactive series. Please note down this question. The metals up in the means high reactivity series. For example, sodium, calcium, aluminium. So these all are the high reactivity series metals. So these cannot be obtained from the compounds by heating with the carbon. So these metals that cannot be extracted by heating process. Okay. So that is also very important thing here. Next one. This is because these metals have more affinity for oxygen than the carbon. Okay. So these metals are obtained by the electrolytic reduction. For example, sodium and magnesium and the calcium obtained by the electrolysis of molten chlorides. The metals deposited at the cathode negatively charged, and where it is deposited at the anode, they are positively charged. So you can see the reactions. First of all, you have to note down this answer. So at cathode, sodium, when it reacts, gain the electron and become Na plus, and at anode, so another reaction takes place, chlorine. So chlorine plus 2 electrons, that forms the chlorine, Cl2. What happens when metals are burnt in air? Explain with example. What happens when metals are burnt in air? Explain it with example. Here, almost all the metals combine with oxygen to form the metal oxide. No need to write all the examples. You can take the few examples and write. So here I have provided the many examples. When the first for copper, which is heated with the oxygen, which forms the copper oxide, CuO. Then when the aluminium oxide reacts, it forms the aluminium reacts with the oxygen, it forms the aluminium oxide. So these two examples are very important. You have to write these two examples. Remaining all, so that depends on you. Next question is here, how the metals reacts with the water. Okay, so just I forgot to write the question. How the metals reaction with the water. Metal reaction with water. Metals react with the water to produce the metal oxide and the gas. Metal oxide and gas is produced. And so here metal plus water, which forms the metal oxide. Then and metal oxides are soluble in water, dissolve in it and form the hydroxide. When the metal oxide, so which react with the water, which forms the metal hydroxide. Okay. Then metals like potassium and the sodium, so they react with water. In case of sodium and potassium, the reaction is violent and the exothermic. When the sodium and the potassium react with the water, that is exothermic, highly exothermic process. See here, when the water react with the potassium, it forms the potassium hydroxide and the hydrogen gas, and heat energy is released. And when sodium react with the water, which forms the sodium hydroxide and the hydrogen and the heat energy. Here the question is how the metals react with the water. Okay, so here I have taken the many examples. You can take two to three examples. The reaction of calcium with water is less. The reaction of calcium with water is very less violent. The heat evolved is not sufficient for to catch the hydrogen um to the to catch the fire. Here calcium which react with the water and forms the calcium hydroxide and hydrogen is released, but that is not enough to catch the fire. Then magnesium that does not react with the cold water. Magnesium that does not react with the cold water, but it reacts with the hot water. Okay. So this is also very important thing. And magnesium hydroxide and the hydrogen is formed. It also starts floating due to the bubbles of hydrogen gas sticking to the surface. So that is the how the magnesium reacts with the water. Then metal like aluminium, iron and the zinc. So this is the iron and the zinc do not react with each other with cold or hot water, but they react with the steam to form the metal oxide and the hydrogen. Here you can see aluminium. So when it react with the water, it form the aluminium oxide and the hydrogen is formed. And when the when the iron react with the water, it forms the iron oxide and the hydrogen gas is released. Please note down the answer. How the metals react with the water. Okay, so in case of potassium and sodium and general equation, in case of potassium and the sodium, then reaction with the calcium, then magnesium, then aluminium and the some other metals. So these all examples I have explained. You can take for 3 marks you can write how many examples, just can see. And for 4 mark examples, so you can explain all these examples. And these um, examples also asked in give reason question or 2 mark question like that. So which is very important topic. So dear students, I will end the class here. So I hope this video will be helpful for your board exam. Thank you. I will continue in the next class.